Hey, I'm David. And let me tell you, life took a wild turn when a car crash and a knock on the door introduced a surprise visitor into our Christmas Eve. My daughter Emma is by the fire, reading our annual Night Before Christmas, when suddenly, an old acquaintance shows up in need. Turns out, she's not just anyone, she's the woman I had a past with, and now she's tangled in our lives again. If you're curious how this unexpected twist will affect our little family, hit that subscribe button and join us for a heartwarming holiday tale that'll leave you questioning what you'd do in my shoes. Welcome to our channel, where life's surprises are as unpredictable as a Vermont snowstorm. David Miller took a moment to savor the memory of his daughter Emma, sitting beside him on the couch in front of the empty fireplace. Her attention fixed on the book in her lap with the kind of intense focus only an 8-year-old can manage. The aroma of freshly baked cookies filled the room. A plateful sat on the mantel next to the usual glass of milk. Through the window he could see large snowflakes dancing in the glow of the front porch light, adding to the cozy scene. He took a half-second too long. "Are we going to start?" Emma asked. "Sure." David said, "You go first." Emma opened the book, a book that she had owned since her 5th Christmas and no longer really needed to use, and began to read. It was the night before Christmas, and all through the house she read. David took his turn. Not a creature was stirring. "Hey, you were supposed to start this year." David laughed. Emma had said the same thing the previous Christmas. "Too bad," he said, sticking out his tongue. "Not even a mouse." Emma gave him a mock glare. David just smiled. Even now, for years after the accident that had claimed his wife's life, it was some pennies hard to look at Emma without seeing Jane's blue eyes and blonde hair, and it was hard not to remember that she didn't care for the nickname that Jane had given her. Emma returned to the book. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that street Nicholas soon would be there. David watched Emma turn her head to look out the window at the snow. Even in this snow-jaded part of northern Vermont, this counted as a big storm. Luke's head slowly turned to the fireplace. "Don't worry, Santa won't let a little snow stop him. It's snowing pretty hard. Dad, not too hard for reindeer." "Cuddy, that's good. I had a dream about Santa last night, and he told me he was going to get me what I asked for." "I hope you didn't ask for anything that wasn't in your letter," David said, sort of. She said, a sly look spreading over her face. "I wished for a mom." "Me too, Peanut. I know it won't be the same, but I think we need another one." "You know, don't say you know, Emma." David said 13 years of teaching high school English had left him with certain reflexes. Santa Claus doesn't usually bring people on his trips. It would be awfully cold in his sleigh. He told me he would. Emma said, "Don't you like girls?" Daddy David smiled. "Of course I like girls." He said, "I married your mom, didn't I? And we had you. Did you go on dates and stuff?" "Sure. We went to the movies and out to dinner, and we liked taking walks together and going skating and cross-country skiing. Don't you want to do that again?" "If I find the right girl." Sure. "Well, that's what I asked Santa for." Emma said, "The right girl. Santa told me to ask for anything I wanted, so I asked him for something for both of us." "And what did he say?" "He said I would get a new mom before I got a new PlayStation." David laughed. That was a pretty safe bet given the cost of new gaming platforms. "I didn't even know you wanted a new PlayStation." "Nothing. It just doesn't play all the new games." "I see. I'd rather have a mom anyway." Well, thank you for asking, Emma." David said, "For both of us, that was very thoughtful." Just don't be too disappointed if we don't find a woman under the tree tomorrow morning. Okay, whatever you say. Dad, I love you. I love you too. We need to finish so someone can go to bed. Yeah, right. I'm going to catch him this year better for bed. Honey, Daddy's tired and he knows who's going to be waking him up at 700. Just remember the rules. I know I can't go downstairs before 7, but I can still sleep. On the stairs right on the landing. David said with a nod, I'll get your pillow and your comforter as soon as we're done, deal. When David's alarm clock went off, he looked over at the red numbers, 110 p.m. Just enough better to transform the living room and still get some sleep. He got up as quietly as he could and crept out of the room. The hundreds of miniature multicolored lights on the Christmas tree cast a festive glow on the staircase. Good thing too, David thought. Without the light he would have tripped over his daughter. Sleeping peacefully on the landing, he stepped over her and silently went about the bittersweet task of creating Christmas. It was something that Jane had loved to do even before Emma was born. The old farmhouse that they had bought 10 years ago seemed to come to life at Christmas, as if the other seasons of the year were simply appetizers. After Emma, the decorating had grown to occupy nearly 2 hours. David had scaled it back in recent years but still spent the bene necessary to convince Emma that Santa had visited. When he was finished, he toyed with the idea of taking her back upstairs. Kids that age were like ragdoll dolls when they were asleep, but Pute would be disappointed not to wake up on the stairs. It would still be dark, but in the light of the tree she would be able to see the filled stockings, the plate where the cookies had been and the empty milk glass. She would convince herself that she had just missed him. Next year she would tell herself next year, provided nobody had spilled the beans about Santa Claus, she would catch him in the act. David tiptoed upstairs and returned to his bed. He was counting on 7 hours of sleep before Emma burst in to wake him up and drag him downstairs. The knock at the door was faint. At first Emma wasn't sure how long it had been going on before it finally woke her up. It grew louder and more frantic, becoming more of a banging, until she quite distinctly heard a woman's voice say on the other side of the door. She glanced upstairs, wondering whether to wake her father. On one hand, that usually took a deal of shaking. Dad was a pretty sound sleeper. On the other hand, there was the Christmas Day injunction. She could go to the bottom step, but no further. Until Dad was up and ready, she went to the bottom step. A quick glance at the tree brought a frown to her face. She had obviously missed him again. Oh please, the woman said again, her voice cracking. As she gave the door a final blow with the side of her fist, Emma decided that the woman's obvious distress represented an exception to the rule. She walked over and pulled the door open a foot. The woman had turned around to stare at the snowstorm and hadn't heard the door open. She was wearing a short parka and apparently little else. Her long blonde hair flew back and forth in the wind. Her bare legs were covered with goosenst. She was wearing high heels that added into her height. Perhaps she was a dimwit. Hello. The woman whipped around. She was obviously tired and she had been crying. Oh, thank God. She said, my car skidded into the ditch in front of your house and my cell doesn't work here. Could I use your phone, please? Emma's eyes traveled up and down the woman. You forgot your pants. She finally pointed out. Yeah, incredible life. Yeah. The woman said, I am a little cold standing here. Honey, maybe you should have worn pants. Sweetie. Could I please come in? The woman begged, tears forming in her eyes again. Emma rolled her eyes and let the woman into the foyer. You're not like a dimwit, are you? I'm sorry, the woman said, turning around to talk to Emma. She had been staring at the tree. Emma shrugged. You're not wearing pants. Your phone doesn't work and you crashed your car. What's your name? Hi, Emma MKI. It's a long story. Could you tell me where the phone is? Honey, in the kitchen, on the wall. Sophia walked through the dining room toward the doorway, to which the young girl pointed. Emma was right behind her. Thank you, Sophia said as she picked up the phone. I'm just going to call my dad. He'll come pick me up and you can get back to sleep. I guess Santa's been here already. Yeah, I knew you weren't him. Anyway, he comes down the YY. That's right, that's right. Are you going to stand right here while I call? Emma nodded solemnly. It was an old-fashioned black dial phone, one that matched perfectly the house in which Sophia had found refuge. She dialed the numbers as the little girl watched Stupid Machine. She muttered, Dad, Mom, are you guys there? Pick up the phone. Hello, call me back, please. She read the number off the phone and then looked over to see that Emma's eyebrows had shot up underneath her blonde bangs. You said a bad word. Emma said, I'm sorry. Don't tell your parents, okay? It looks like I'm going to be here for a while. It's only my dad. Emma said, my mom is dead. Do you want some pants? Sure. That would be very nice. Thank you, Emma. Maybe you should wake up your father. I know where the pants are. She ran off and returned several minutes later with a pair of her father's sweatpants from the hamper in the laundry room. Her eyes widened again as Sophia peeled off her coat to reveal a red silk top and red panties. I know, Sophia said with a shake of her head. Men, you don't have something like a sweatshirt, do you? Emma rolled her eyes one more better. Several minutes later she had Sophia properly and warmly outfitted. You don't need to stay up any longer. Why don't you go back to bed? Emma stared her down. You don't want to leave me here wandering around your house, do you? Emma slowly shook her head from side to side. Let me try my mom's cell phone. Okay. Maybe she has it near her bed and I can wake her up. She dialed the number. Mom, it's Sophia. Thank God I got you. I'm stuck out here on Maple Road. Sophia said Mappa Road. Sophia corrected her. Anyway, you and her body seemed to sag as she listened to her mother talk. Yeah, sure, but she listened some more. Jay and Hada. Sophia looked down at Emma. He had somebody else with him when he came home. Yeah. Look, I know you never liked him. Oh, you did not, and you were right. So when will you guys be home? The 15th. Are you serious? Okay. No, I have an audition on the 3D. I'll see you guys in a while. No, I'll be fine. As soon as this storm is over, I'll find a motel. Then I'll head back and stay with Susan or something. Have a great dinner. Okay? Love to, Dad. Sophia hung up the phone and slumped into a kitchen chair. After a few moments she looked over at Emma. I guess I'll be sleeping here tonight if that's okay with you, sure. Emma said you can share my bed. Said we only have 2 bedrooms that have heat come on. One of the advantages of living in a farmhouse on a long driveway was that David seldom saw a need to close the red and white check curtains that Jane had picked for their bedroom. Blinking his eyes open, he watched the big flakes of snow that were falling at a 45 angle outside the window. It took him only a moment to realize that it was well past dawn and that he had awakened on his own. David got up and pulled on his bathrobe, fully expecting to find Peanut still asleep on the bottom step. She was not there, however, nor was she downstairs gazing at her presence. He returned upstairs to steps at Abena. "Peanut?" he asked through the closed door to her bedroom. He knocked lightly on the door and began to reach for the knob. His daughter appeared at the door, her eyes still heavy with sleep. She said. She put a finger to her lips and quietly pulled the door shut behind her. "You'll wake up, Sophia?" David smiled. It was the indulgent smile of a rural single parent accustomed to his only child's imaginary friends. He winked at Emma and tiptoed downstairs with her hand in his. "How about some Christmas music?" he asked when they reached the living room. "Dad, that'll wake Sophia up." Sure. Jeez. Okay, David said. After a brief pause, "Shall we start with our stockings without Sophia?" "Of course not. Honey, tell me something. Did you and Sophia stay up late last night?" "Not that late. She was pretty tired when she got here." "I see. So how about we have some breakfast?" "Sure," Emma said. "Maybe then she'll wake up." David stopped abruptly in the dining room and Emma ran smack into him. "Daddy, honey, whose coat is that? Sophia's. And those are her shoes. The high heels there." "Yeah, other than that, she was kind of just wearing this weird-looking underwear. I was afraid she might be some kind of dimwit, Emma. You know, I don't like you using that word." "I didn't call her a dimwit," Emma said. "I just asked her if she was a dimwit." "Emma, I know still when you see her. Anyway, she said she was cold, so I gave her some of your sweats and turned my heater up last night. Is that okay?" David turned and squatted down in front of his daughter. "Emma is the woman who left this coat and these shoes here, sleeping in your room. Was that bad?" "After we were in bed, she said she'd sleep on the couch, but I told her we weren't allowed downstairs before 7+. I was sort of afraid she might steal my presents. Daddy's just going to look it on Sophia." "Okay, honey, why don't you go get yourself some juice? Okay, make sure you're quiet." David pushed open the door and was met with a blast of hot air, the small electric heater that his daughter used to supplement. The house's preheating system had evidently been running for a while. As a result, the woman in his daughter's bed had kicked off the bed covers and was lying in the bed dressed only in a red nightgown and red panties. Her sweats were on the floor beside the bed. He should have stepped back and knocked on the door, but she was facing away from him on her side and he was caught by the way her long blonde hair was spl out on the pillow. He watched the effect of her rhythmic breathing on her slender figure. His eyes lingered on the creamy white skin, and then there were those legs. Those long legs that stretched out the length of the bed. Long legs that moved with sensuous slowness as they straightened and twisted toward him as he stood there watching. Long legs that suddenly disappeared beneath the comforter as the young woman yanked it up. "Mr. Miller." It was a shriek of embarrassment and stunned recognition. As he stared into her wide blue eyes, David realized that he knew her as well. Sophia Harper. "Oh my God. This is your house? Oh my God. I'm sorry. Sophia, pitiful life. I was just making sure you were okay. Why don't you put those sweats on and come downstairs?" He backed out of the room and fled down the stairs. Back in the kitchen, Emma was breaking eggs into a bowl for him to scramble. Sophia joined them in a few minutes. "Hey, Sophia," Emma said. "Merry Christmas." The same to you, honey. And you too, of course, Mr. Miller. You guys know each other? Emma asked. Sophia was in 12th grade when your mom and I first came here to teach. David explained, your mom was my first drama teacher. Sophia said, smiling at the memory. She was just so encouraging, she means. In contrast to me. David said he gave me a B-. She deserved a B-. Your mom thought I was a wonderful actress. She still deserved a B-. I so did not. It was the only grade I ever got lower than a B+. That grade got me W8 listed at Julia RD, but she got in after months of waiting. You're an actress. David and Sophia both stopped to look at the young girl whose eyes had been darting back and forth between the two, as if she were watching a tennis game. That's cool. Emma went on without waiting for an answer. Can you cook the eggs now, Dad? I'm hungry. I put in some extra for Sophia. Thank you, honey. Sophia said that was very sweet of you coming up. David said you handle the toast okay. Okay. Emma ran back to the pantry to get the toaster, as Sophia and David continued to talk. Look, I'll be out of here this morning. Mr. Miller, like I said, I didn't know it was your house. It turns out my parents are on some cruise in the Caribbean, but I'm sure I can get somebody to pull me out of your ditch. Have you looked outside yet? No, Sophia said, her eyes drifted toward the window. That's a bad word. Emma said, returning with the toaster. I'm sorry. She said, how old are you? Honey, I'm 8. How old are you? I'm 28. Okay, Emma said. Were you telling Daddy why you came to visit us in your underwear? She was just about to, David said. With a smile, he poured it all up of milk into the bowl and turned on the burner. Sophia gave David a glare before deciding how to proceed in Emma's presence. Maybe we could just say that my boyfriend and I had a disagreement last night. So I left the house without really thinking and headed home. Well, I think you're going to be stuck here for at least the next 3 days. David said, so where do you live? I did live in Boston. Sophia answered, I'll have to find something else when I get back. It was his place. Before your dish, Emma asked my what honey, you told your mom you had a dish. On the 3rd, an addition, Sophia corrected her. I can stay with a girlfriend and then Susan. That's right. Sophia said she remembers everything she hears. David said, so be careful what you say around her. All right, peanuts, start toasting and I'll start cooking. So what are you auditioning for? A play by Richard Whitman? Betrayal. Don't tell me you're auditioning for Catherine. As a matter of fact, I am. You say it like there's something wrong with it. And how do you know about it? Anyway, it's brand new. It's not as new as you think. I saw it back in college when he was still working on. It's just never been to Broadway before, and there's nothing wrong with Catherine. She's the pretty one. Right, gets the guy lives happily ever after. That's right. But you'd make such a much better Stephanie. Sophia screwed up her face. But Stephanie is a whack job. She's also the emotional center of the play. David said that's been your issue all along. Sophia. What are you talking about? Jane. Loved your acting. The way you could command a stage and draw an audience's attention. But you always went for the pretty girl roles. You're saying I'm not pretty? Sophia asked. I think you're pretty. Emma interjected. She was now toasting her 3rd set of bread as David divided the eggs up among 3 plates he had taken down from the cupboard. Of course you're pretty. David said you're a beautiful woman, Sophia, but pretty girl. Actresses are a dime a dozen. You could be such a good actress, a real actress, doing real acting. There are lots of women who can play Kath and do a good job, but there aren't many actresses who can play Stephanie. If I'm such a good actress, how come you gave me a B-? Mrs. Miller gave me an app as. Jane taught a drama class. I taught a literature class about drama, and in my class you never applied yourself like you did in hers. Can we open presents now? Emma asked. David and Sophia looked over at Emma. Her plate was empty, while the plates of the two adults held scrambled eggs that were growing colder by the minute. Honey, Sophia and I are going to be arguing all morning. At this rate, Emma complained, so maybe we could go into the living room and you guys could finish yelling at each other there. Peanut, we're not yelling, we're just having a discussion. You're right, Emma said with a snort. It had seemed like such a good idea asking Santa Claus for a new girlfriend for Daddy. She hoped he hadn't screwed up her other presents this badly. I tell you what. You go on ahead, and Sophia and I will finish our eggs. We'll be right behind you, and then we can open our presents. Emma raised her eyebrows and gave her father a skeptical look. We won't even talk about grades or acting, okay? Honey, Sophia said. Emma gave a quick nod and dashed into the other room. What a sweetie, Sophia said as they returned to their breakfast. Yeah, thank you for the card you sent after Jane died. By the way, I still have it somewhere. It meant a lot to me that you wrote about her teaching. She was my favorite teacher. Sophia mumbled, even more than my professors in college. That means a lot to Well. We'd better not keep Emma waiting. Have you had enough? Yes, thank you, Mr. Miller. I think you can call me David now. Sophia. Shall we see if Emma has managed to keep from peeing? Opening the Miller family Christmas presents took no more than 15 minutes from beginning to end. One of them was a board game, and Emma wasted no minute in insisting that her father and her new friend play it with her. The morning passed in high-spirited competition that ended with Sophia claiming the win. David escaped his daughter's demand for a rematch by noting that the turkey had to go in the oven. So Emma and Sophia played a second benna. Emma skipped into the kitchen a while later, loudly proclaiming her victory. Sophia followed a few minutes afterward, having replaced the game pieces in the box. Dinner should be ready around 2000. David said, Sophia, some of my clothes might fit you, unless you'd rather wear sweats all day. Or if you have clothes in your car, I'd be happy to go out and get them for you. I wish, Sophia said. Maybe if you have some jeans or something. That would be great. Mr. Miller. David. Actually, I'd like to run out to my car and get my script, since it looks like I'm going to be trapped here for a few days anyway. Yay, Emma cheered because you're a. Sophia said, what are you afraid of? The words of 304. Maybe you'd feel more comfortable with the woman of loose morals. Emma giggled as she watched her father read from the script that he and Sophia shared. Okay, and Sophia shared. Okay. David said, Benna for a break and Benna for you to go to your bedroom, Peanut, and watch one of your new DVDs. But I want to watch you guys. Emma protested. I know, honey, but it's an adult play and Sophia and I need to talk. Fine. Emma said. With an exaggerated sigh, she stomped off upstairs without any intention of putting the DVD into her portable player. Do you want some water, Sophia? David offered. Thanks. That would be great, and thank you so much again for reading with me. It's so much better with somebody else, and you sure are getting into Stephanie. I can't believe you would prefer to be Catherine. Stephanie is so much better of a role. I know that, but I've never done anything like Stephanie. I know, David said with as much gentleness as he could. Maybe it's better for you to try. Though you'd like that, wouldn't you? Sophia nearly spat the words at David. You could sit in your suburban house and look out the window at your Honda and your little dog and your 3 children and think how much better your life is than mine. David opened his mouth to answer, but Sophia had a full head of steam. Have yourself a stupid party. Invite the neighbors over. Look at my sister. Everyone. Look at the loser. She can't stay off drugs. She can't stop drinking. She can't even satisfy herself. David had the next line, but found that he was watching the tears running down Sophia's face. A giggle from the top of the stairs broke the mood. Peanut, David growled. I wasn't listening. Peanut protested. David and Sophia heard the feet in the hallway and the slamming of Emma's door. They both burst into laughter. That was wonderful. David said, it's hard. Sophia said after a deep breath, of course it's hard. That's what makes it good. Thank you, David. Thank you for encouraging me to do this. I still don't know if you'll be able to audition for Stephanie, but I've learned it a lot just reading it. Sophia, you just walk in there and you say L. I realize I'm here to read for Catherine, but I'd rather read for Stephanie. All they can do is say no. She took another breath. Okay, David, I'll try. She leaned over and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Take the chance. Sophia. David said, some days you just have to take the chance. And God bless Daddy and Mommy in heaven and our new friend Sophia, who could maybe stay just one more day. Sophia laughed out loud as Emma opened one eye from her position, kneeling beside the bed. It's been 4 days already, she said, 2 days after Christmas. Just when it looked as if the county would be arriving any minute to clear the road, the next storm had dumped another 1.5 feet of snow. Don't you want your bed back? Honey, I feel bad making you share with me for another night. You would stay longer if you and Daddy didn't spend all day arguing. Emma pouted. Sophia laughed again. You know perfectly well that it's a play, Emma. The characters in the play do a lot of arguing. All I know is, for the first 2 days, Dad did most of the yelling and then you switched and you started yelling. Sweetie, I was planning on reading for the part of Catherine who doesn't yell much, so when we started reading, your father did most of the yelling, but he sort of convinced me to try out for the part of Stephanie who yells a lot. So we switched parts halfway through. So you're not mad at Dad? Oh no, Sophia said, a gleam in her eyes. She knew that Emma wouldn't understand. Not at all. And Daddy's not mad at you? I hope not. Honey, Sophia said, a smile flitted over her face. That would make for a most pleasant night. Ready for bed? You bet. Good night, Sophia. Good night. Sophia heard David go to bed half an hour later. She waited another half an hour before slowly pushing herself off Emma's bed. The little girl was in a deep sleep, a smile on her lips. It was her father's smile, that crooked grin that she had become very fond of over the last few days. It was a smile that she hoped to see again in just a few minutes. She would do without the high heels. It was much easier to tiptoe barefoot on the soft pine floor. The heels were still downstairs. Anyway, she crept out of the room and pulled the door closed behind her. The door to David's room was ajar and Sophia eased it open. The light of a crescent moon illuminated the figure on the bed. David was sleeping on his back. He had built up the fire in the wood stove before he came up, and the heat in the living room below poured up through the grate in the floor. So he had no need for the heavy quilt at the bottom of his bed. Instead, his body was outlined underneath only a flannel sheet. With exquisite care, Sophia leaned over and pulled it down. Her former teacher was sleeping in a pair of loose-fitting pajama bottoms and looked delicious in the moonlight. She put one knee on the bed and stopped, her heart beating wildly as David mumbled and shifted his position. Finally he stopped. Sophia climbed onto the bed, lifting her other leg to straddle David's calves. "Some Benny," she thought to herself. "You have to take the chance." She leaned forward and kissed him softly on the tip of the chin and then again on his shoulder. He didn't move and she began to kiss him. Jane, David's moan startled her. She hadn't even realized that his fingers were entwined in her hair. Was it good or bad that he was dreaming about his late wife? Was he going to be angry? When he woke up and found that it was her, she kept kissing his neck. But the patience he had shown with her over the last 4 days, his careful efforts to help her look deep within the wannabe starlet and awaken the real actress that lurked inside, demanded that she take no less better with him. She tried to get close to him. When she heard Sophia, a thrill coursed deep through her body. David's voice was still heavy with sleep. He was dreaming about her. "Now, Sophia." She opened her eyes and she could tell from his voice that he was awake. She looked up at him. Had she fallen asleep? Had she fainted? Her eyes held his, waiting for him to chastise her, to express his shock, to order her out of his house. He looked at her for what seemed forever. Her stomach was fluttering again. Her breaths were coming quickly. "I want to be with you." He finally said it was perfect. She felt faint again. She lay her head against his thigh and just let herself feel. David reached down and grabbed hold of her shoulders. "Come here, love," he said, giving her a gentle tug. She looked up at him with a smile. Flurries were swirling around the late 90s Toyota Camry that was headed south on the Massachusetts Turnpike over the school's Easter weekend at the end of March. "Are we there yet?" As the car stopped. "No, then we're probably not there yet." David said. He looked over at Emma in the passenger seat. "Only another half hour since. Cuddy. And then we go to the play. First we go to a party. Uncle Ben always has a party before his plays, but Sophia will be there for a little while. Then sh have to go get ready." "Where's the party?" "At Julia R.D., where Sophia went to college, where she was waitlisted." "Waitlisted?" David said with a laugh. "Yes, with a laugh, yes. It means that they haven't decided about whether to let you in or not. In her case, she did get in, even though you gave her a bad grade." "Well, I did make a phone call for her," David said, looking over and giving Emma a wink. "Your grandpa knew a guy in the admissions office, so I let him know that I didn't think the grade really reflected her potential." "That was nice of you. Your daddy can be nice, you know. Look, you can see New York. See the skyscrapers. Wow, I don't believe it." The tall bearded man in the jacket and dark turtleneck stared at the couple walking toward him. The younger of the two broke free and ran toward him, Uncle Ben Peanut. He bent down and caught her as she threw her arms around his neck. "Hello, Richard." David approached at a much more sedate pace. "I can't believe you're here. I thought I'd given up sending you invitations, since you never came anymore." "After you did take me off your list," David assured him. As they embraced, "I got an invitation from your star tonight, Sylvia." "Sylvia is not your star," David scoffed. Ben smiled. "Well, she does have top billing," he said. Her life, Sophia, she was one of my first students. Jane too. Is she here yet? Not yet. No, well, that explains a lot. You wouldn't believe her addition. Her agent puts her up for Catherine and she comes in looking gorgeous and I look up and look back down and then she says, Mr. Whitman, I'd like to read from for the part of Stephanie. David smiled and she had it. Ben said right then she had that quality in her voice. I didn't even need to hear her read the part, but once she did, it was even better. Of course, Sophia and Dad yelled at each other all Christmas. Emma piped up. Did they? Ben asked. Your daddy was the first director of this play when we were in college together. Oops, my mistake. There she is over there. Sophia. David watched Emma take off again. He desperately wanted to follow. He and Sophia had talked a few pennies since she left and he had been the first one she had called when she learned she had gotten the role. But he didn't want to look desperate. That's not Sylvia. She's with, is it? He asked Ben. No. That's her understudy, L.I. Wadsworth. David nodded. You took a chance casting Sophia. The other woman is a more typical Stephanie. She's got a sort of edge to her. The poor woman seems to despise life. That's Sophia's only problem too. Damn happy. I asked L.I. to be my picotter tonight. You'll picotter. You know the guy who sticks the bull before the matador takes over. L.I. is supposed to give Sophia a little go tonight. She was doing a good job. In the last 3 minutes she had managed to suggest, without being overtly offensive, that the only reason Sophia had gotten the job was that she had been close to the play's producer. Sophia was quietly fuming, searching her brain for a snappy retort. When she heard Emma's yell, she knelt down to accept Emma's embrace. She looked up to see David. Not wanting to appear desperate herself, she decided not to run over there. Instead, she introduced Emma to L.I. and explained how they had met. And that's your father over there. Ollie asked, talking to Mr. Whitman. Uncle Ben, your uncle, L.I. asked with malicious glee. Not really my uncle, Emma explained solemnly. The malicious glee in the voice of Sophia's friend had gone completely over her head. He and Dad went to school together. Well, that explains a lot. L.I. said, what are you talking about? Sophia was getting angry now. Somebody made a phone call. That's all I read for this part. Sophia said between gritted teeth, your little suggestion that Dad made a phone call. Emma said. L.A. laughed aloud when Sophia asked her. Emma looked up at her with wide eyes, uncertain of the look she was getting. Daddy told me he made a phone call for you, son of a... Sophia said. She looked over at where David was talking with Ben. Her reservations about going over there had disappeared. You stupid son of a... she said, trembling as she stood in front of him. What, you made a phone call, you son of a... She spat. She threw her drink in his face. For good measure she added a slap to his cheek before storming off. That's perfect. Ben said what David asked. That's the attitude I need. She's going to slay them tonight, but she thinks I called you. David said she obviously thinks I got her the part. You and your goddamn picotter tell her tomorrow. Pal, let her read tonight's reviews first. Okay. David nodded. He sat in the audience that night and was slain. David sat alone at the restaurant in the late summer. Sun school was beginning in another week and he and Olivia would have precious few weekday evenings together for the next few months. She had just started teaching French last year, and it had taken David until a few days before the end of the spring semester to agree to her repeated invitations that she would love to be asked out. She was a very attractive brunette. Her only flaw in David's eyes was her youth. At 26, she was 14 years younger than David. Finally, though, on the day after Sophia accepted a Tony Award in the company of an actor who looked just as pretty as Sophia, when they had been standing together on the red carpet, he gave in to her almond eyes, her auburn hair, and her winning smile. Emma hated her. At first, of course, she wasn't Sophia. Even now, Emma still wasn't overly fond of his new girlfriend and didn't understand why Sophia didn't call anymore. Hadn't she and Daddy made up? David had lied to her. He told her that he had explained the misunderstanding, but that Sophia was just too busy with her play. The truth was that while the reviews of Havertall had been good, the reviews of the performance of Sophia Harper were over the top. He couldn't tell her he was afraid of taking that away. It was her dream to act to get reviews like that. Whatever she had felt for him that night that she had crept into his room, she would get over it, just as Emma would get over her. Emma and Olivia had spent the afternoon together bonding, with any luck, over a mutual love of bicycling. He looked at his watch again. They would be here any minute now. David. He looked up. Sophia Harper looked even lovelier than usual. She was wearing an electric blue blouse that stretched and bunched in all the right places. It topped a pair of black pants that appeared glued to her shapely legs. He jumped to his feet. Sophia, this is my mom and dad. This is David Miller, the Mr. Miller who gave you the B-. David and Sophia couldn't resist smiling at each other. Never let that go, did you? I never did, even though I called Julia RD and explained it. You called them, sure, and that was the only phone call I'd ever made. Sophia's mouth dropped open. Oh God, of course it was. That was the phone call Emma was talking about Sophia. Mrs. Harper said with disapproval. Oval. Sophia turned to David and rolled her eyes out of her parents' sight. Then told me last week that you hadn't called him to lobby for me getting the part the minute after I left the play last weekend. Why didn't you tell me? David shook his head. You are too good. You got a Tony Award. I couldn't. He could see tears welling in Sophia's eyes. Sophia. Emma's shout caught the attention of every other customer in the restaurant. She was standing at the door holding Olivia's hand. At Emma's insistence, all 6 of them had dinner together. It was as uncomfortable an evening as he could remember. At the end, Sophia went home with her parents. He went home with Emma and Olivia went home by herself. Did you have fun? David asked Emma. She nodded vigorously. For her late October birthday, she had asked to be allowed to spend an entire week alone with Jane's parents down in Westchester County. He had driven her down there on Friday afternoon and they had driven her back on Sunday. They had just driven off after an early supper and left Emma and David alone. It was great. We went into New York and rode a ferry and went to the zoo and she stopped abruptly, her eyes wide. Honey, you can tell me. David said you went to Sophia's show, didn't you? Emma nodded again much more slowly. Sophia Harper was the star of a brand new musical Stepsister which had opened to rave reviews a month earlier. You're not upset? Honey, of course not. I was the one who called her to get the tickets for you. She's a friend. Was it good? More nodding followed. Oh, Dad, it was so good. The words rushed from her mouth. She plays Cinderella's stepsister and she sings and dances and everything. We got to go back to her dressing room and see her costumes, and Grandma and Grandpa thought she was great, and we talked about it and sang the songs all the way back home. So did Olivia come over? It was such an abrupt change that it took him a second to answer. We decided to see other people. Peanut. She thinks I like somebody else. Olivia had been waiting for him when he got back on Friday, dressed in a white nightie that was transparent enough to hide none of her young charms. It's been months, she moaned as he peeled it over her head. They were in each other's embrace, and after a minute she pushed herself off. This isn't going to work, she said. It's not. You're just really not into me, are you? I am, David protested. I've been thinking about getting together with you for a month now, ever since I knew Emma would be away. He reached for her again, and she stepped back off the bed. Olivia, what's bothering? You want to know what's bothering me? It's your actress friend, Sophia. I saw the way you guys were looking at each other at that restaurant. Olivia, that was 2 months ago, and you haven't spoken to her since. Well, no, I called her to get tickets for Emma and Jane's parents to go to her new show. You couldn't just buy them off the internet. Olivia, what's wrong? You're in love, David, and not with me. And God knows I've had plenty of guys that I knew didn't really love me, but not any who I knew loved another woman. David was dumbfounded by now. Sophia was a lovely memory, not to mention a wonderful fantasy, but the woman was a Broadway star dating who knew what athlete or actor. But he was aware that the moment to protest that no, of course he wasn't in love with Sophia Harper had already passed. Olivia began pulling on the clothes she had brought with her. Olivia, spare me. David, spare both of us. I had a good bend over the summer, what with school and your daughter and everything we both knew. It would be tough to keep it going this fall. Your actress friend is still there in your mind. I hope she's there for you in real life too. You should ask her. You know, I saw the way she looked at you. That's silly, David protested. Olivia shrugged. So was that story of her showing up at your house last Christmas. But it was true. Right. She'd finished dressing and was out the door with a quick kiss on his cheek. The memory was fading already. I'm sorry, Daddy, Peanut said, interrupting his thoughts. I know you liked her. That's okay, Peanut. She just wasn't the right girl. So who do you like? David smiled at his daughter. Nobody. Do you like Sophia? David felt himself blushing, something he hadn't done in a long beta. Of course I do. Sweetie, she's our friend. I'm glad you had a good beta. It was wonderful. Only what we met. Her boyfriend, said. Sophia's boyfriend? David said he felt a shiver run through him. Yeah. He's nice. He's got like $1 billion or whatever in his own plane. He does some kind of investments. Yes. Anyway, he really likes Sophia. Well, of course she's a wonderful person. I wish you were her boyfriend, Daddy. I guess I'm just not the right guy for her, David said with a sad smile. Now someone needs to get ready for bed because someone has school tomorrow morning. Emma threw her arms around his neck. Thank you for my birthday present, Daddy. She whispered, You're welcome, Peanut. The snow returned in mid-December. Flurries were swirling outside the grocery store on the 20th as David and Emma stood in line to buy the ingredients for their Christmas feast. Daddy, look. David followed his daughter's pointing finger across the store but saw nothing that should have produced the horrified look on the little girl's face. "No, Dad, right here." She poked the tabloid on the stand directly in front of her. It wasn't the main headline, but a small picture of Sophia and a good-looking guy. In the bottom right-hand corner of the cover was plastered with the headline, "Stepsister to Mary Sophia's getting married." Emma asked in a small, hesitant voice. "I guess so." David said, "Can we buy it, Dad, so I can read it in the car?" Sure. Peanut. Emma wasted no minute in finding the article. In truth, a mere squib in a gossip column. After she was buckled into her seat for the trip home, Nancy Adler, the publicist for Stepsister star, came. Halka confirms that the Tony Award-winning actress plans to marry over the Christmas vacation. She's going to take a week off from the show for the honeymoon. Adler said, "What can I say? She's in love." Neither Harper nor her boyfriend, Playboy Martin Evans, was available for comment. The whirlwind romance has been the talk of Broadway for the last 2 months. "I can't believe it." Emma said, "Why not, honey? She didn't tell us for anything." Emma wind. "It's not like her family. We should be at 8. Emma hadn't yet learned how to mutter under her breath so that no one else could hear. David found that he too was wondering what would have happened if things had worked out differently. He took a quick look over at Emma, resolving then and there to buy her the one present that she had been asking for and that he had so far been able to resist buying. "Okay, with incredible wife," David said. "You go first." "No, Dad. This year. You go first." David closed his eyes for a moment. His little girl was growing up. In the coming year she would probably learn the truth about Santa Claus. Well, Emma asked, "Are we going to start sure?" It was the night before Christmas and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. Yes, the stockings were hung by the chimney with care. "Are you sure you don't want to put up our regular stockings?" Emma together. They looked at the fireplace in place of the usual red felt boots. Emma had insisted that David hang to fishnet thigh-high stockings that she claimed to have borrowed from David's sister the week before. Aunt Beth said, "The bigger the stockings, the more presents you got." Emma said. David smiled as they continued reading. Fortunately, he had purchased a number of small presents this year. With luck, he would be able to fill Emma's stocking without having her think that Santa had cheated her on the presents under the tree. When they were finished reading, Emma took her place on the landing and was asleep within minutes. A few minutes later, David stepped over her and climbed the stairs to his own room. His alarm went off at 110 and he was stunned not to see Emma where he had left her, sure that she had simply crawled back into her room. He descended the stairs and there she was sitting on the hearth, wearing the stockings along with the same red L.Y. panties she had been wearing last year. A cheery fire crackled behind her. David walked over to stand in front of her. "Sophia," he said with disbelief. "Sophia Harper. But you're getting married." She gave him a sexy smile. "I am. But what about?" Martin realized that I was in love with someone else, but the article never said I was marrying Martin. Sophia said with a giggle, "You need to read more carefully, Professor." I didn't read it. Emma, did she read it to me while we were in the car? She was devastated. Sophia laughed and patted the hearth beside her. David sat down and Sophia gave him a long, lingering kiss. "Silly man. She set this up. She called me on Thanksgiving and told me that you liked me and I like you. And we should just stop seeing these stupid other people and get married, and I couldn't think about anything else. That's when Martin and I broke up. So I called Emma and made some arrangements for Christmas Eve. You mean she knew the article was a fake? David asked. Sophia nodded. So I bought her that PlayStation for nothing. Sophia laughed again. I guess acting runs in the family, she said. By the way, she's at my parents' tonight. My mom drove me over here and took Emma back with her after she let me in. But what about Santa Claus? David, she knows about Santa Claus. She was the one who suggested lighting the fire, and she told me it was more fun getting your present herself. My present. Sophia held out her arms. Would you like to unwrap? It was David's turn to smile. You took quite a chance, believing Emma, didn't you, about my loving you coming here and waiting for me? Some bennies you have to take the chance. Mr. Miller, I do love you. David, I love you too. Sophia? I only have one question. What's that? When Emma was leaving tonight, she told me it was my poem. Now, what was she talking about? Does she know any poems? David shook his head. Other than the one we read earlier tonight. No. Which poem is that? The Night Before Christmas. I always read it so that it was not even the mouse that was stirring. Sophia started giggling. A moment later, she rolled off the hearth onto the floor, clutching at her stomach. What? David asked. Not a creature was stirring, not even a peanut, she prompted. The stockings were hung by the chimney. David continued with Sophia. She blurted out. He joined her on the floor. When they finished laughing, they embraced under the glow given off by hundreds of tiny multicolored lights. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and bookmark. We will provide you with more high-quality audio videos on the topic of infidelity.